One of the most asked questions that I get when I'm using a tarp setup on a backpacking trip or a long distance hike is, how do I deal with bugs? In this video, I'm going to share a few tips with all of you that I like to use, and I'm also going to go over a couple of different options that you can try out to help manage bugs and make your tarp experiences just a little bit better. Hey everyone, Knowledge here with Reach Your Summit. I've become an avid tarp user on many of my backpacking trips. It's become my chosen shelter over a hammock system or a tent. I just love the deeper connection that it provides to the outdoors, the versatility, the packability, the lighter weight, the lower cost. The benefits just go on and on down the list. One valid concern when using a tarp is bugs. Here in New England, in the Northeast, we get bugs throughout most of the year. Sometimes that bug pressure can be very high, along with the humidity, and other times it can be very low. But fear not, here are a few tips that I like to use when I'm out on a trail and I'm using a tarp system. So the first thing that's going to have a huge influence on my tarp experience is my campsite selection. So as nice of a view as this might provide, this is going to be an area that bugs and mosquitoes are going to gravitate toward. But I also want to follow leave no trace principles. So I'm going to be at least 200 feet away from the water source. And I need to look around for some nice flat ground. As nice of an area as this might be, it is pretty close to the water, so I'm going to avoid this one. This looks like a great spot right here. So that's one way that I can be assured that bugs won't be as prevalent in the area that I have my tarp set up. Now another thing that I can do at night, depending on the conditions and how I'm feeling, is I can set up my tarp in the path of the wind or the breeze. And what that is going to do is it's going to blow any body scent that I have away from my shelter area. It's also going to blow the mosquitoes and the bugs away, so it's going to keep them away from my shelter to a certain extent. Okay, so you have your tarp set up. Another thing that I can do to mitigate bugs or manage bugs when I'm using a tarp system is all in my clothing. You want to look for muted colors. Insects are attracted to very bright colors, so you want to go with things that are neutral or a bit darker to reduce the likelihood of mosquitoes buzzing around you. And along with my clothing, my tarp is also going to be a bit more muted. This is an olive drab green tarp. That'll help reduce the likelihood of bugs buzzing around constantly. It will also allow me to do dispersed camping in areas that allow it, which will also allow me to possibly have a deeper wild experience and be a little further away from water if I chose to. Now, another thing that I can do is I can treat my gear with permethrin. I do this on occasion, but you need to be very careful when you're treating your gear with permethrin. You want to spray it in a well-ventilated area. Also, if you have a cat like I do, you don't want to spray permethrin around the cat. It can be harmful and fatal, and honestly, I probably wouldn't want to spray it near a dog either. Permethrin will last 6 weeks or 6 washings, whichever comes first. If you're out in a heavy downpour, then I would consider that one washing. It works against ticks, mosquitoes, flies, gnats, a whole bunch of little critters. And if they land on the fabric, it will kill them very quickly. Another thing that I'll consider when I'm bringing a tarp out on my backpacking trip is the time of year and the location. Those can be huge influences as well. If I'm going to be out in May or June on the long trail in Vermont, chances are it's going to be very wet and very buggy. If I'm out on the AT, say July or August, you're most likely going to be running into gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and again, mud and rain. But if I'm out on the West Coast, say around the High Sierra in California, and it's September, chances are I'm going to have very fair weather. It's going to be almost completely bug-free, and I might not even need the tarp at all. And I can find out that information ahead of time with my trip research. Lastly, try to leave the deodorant at home. Just use unscented soaps that are biodegradable. You can use Dr. Bronner's, or you can use Sea to Summit's Wilderness Wash. As nice as it can be and as much of a morale booster as it can be to smell a little better when you're out there, it is guaranteed that the bugs will think the exact same thing and be more likely to buzz around you and bother you when you are using a tarp out on the trail. So we ditched the deodorant. We have our muted colors on. Our tarp is muted as well. We've set up our tarp based on good campsite selection, and we configured it to the current conditions that we are out in, and our gear has been treated with permethrin. Still, things are not in our favor. So here are a couple of different options that you can use to help manage bugs when you're out on the trail and using a tarp system. So the first thing that can help, and that's going to be the lowest cost and lightest option, is your insect repellent. What I'll do is I'll just take a bandana, or in this case I have a buff, and I can spritz just a little bit of it on the fabric itself. This is something that will not attract insects like my deodorant would. And I can wear this over my head. I can tie this around my arm. I can tie it around my leg while I'm hiking even. This will work throughout the entire day, along with your time at camp each night. You don't have to spray it all over your skin and all over your clothing and everything, just wherever those problem areas might be. What you choose to use is going to be up to you. I haven't used DEET in several years now. DEET can be harmful to our gear, it's harmful to the environment, and it can also be harmful to us. Now, there are certain locations in the world where I might still end up using DEET because it's going to be the best option. But here in New England, in the Northeast, and in other locations around the country, I have found my natural repellents or picaridin to work really well. In this case, over the last couple of years, I've been using Herbal Armor by All Terrain. They're based out of New Hampshire. This has worked really well for me against mosquitoes, ticks, flies, gnats, no-see-ums. And I've also had a good experience with lemon eucalyptus tree oil. But this Herbal Armor is my favorite stuff. Now, one of the most popular options that you'll see on the trail and that you'll hear about a lot for people that are using tarps is the Bivy. This can come in several different materials, several different configurations. A lot of them are relatively light in weight. This one here that I have is 4.7 ounces, and it's going to add a modular component to your tarp setup. So the Bivy is basically just a giant insulation-less sleeping bag with mosquito netting that I have at the top here for my face, And my sleeping pad and my quilt just slide right into the bivy, and then I zip this up, and this gives me bug protection. It also helps increase my sleep system by about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. This one that I had made in particular also has some nylon fabric around a lot of it, so it gives me a little bit of splash protection from the rain, but most importantly, the bug protection. So for my setup here with my pad and quilt and everything inside, I have a little bit of shock cord here, and I have shock cord on my pack. And then I have a loop that I attached to my tarp, and I just feed that through. I hook that to the other one, and then I hook my bivy to that. That pulls it off of my face, so I don't have it draped over me when I'm sleeping inside of the bivy at night. Now, my bivy and tarp system weighs about 9.2 ounces. That's very close in weight to my Z-Pack's Hexamid tent, which weighs 9.7 ounces on my scale. So the bivy and tarp system saves me just a little bit of weight. So in some cases, depending on how high the bug pressure might be, I may just go with the Hexamid tent or a lightweight tent, just to have a little bit more room to move around, a little bit more sanity compared to what I would get with the bivy. Most of the time, I'm able to get away with just using the tarp, which is my preferred way of camping, next to not using anything at all. The next option is the mosquito head net. So with the mosquito head net, I like to wear my cap, and then I just drape this over and cinch this down. This gives me a little bit of sanity. It helps keep the bugs off of my face. The whole idea is that my quilt is going to be wrapped around my shoulders all the way down. So in very light bug pressure, this could be a great option. I wouldn't use it under heavy bug pressure unless you are very hardcore and don't mind the bugs at all. So I like to use this method when bug pressure is a little bit more minimal and I just want something that's nice and light and packable and is able to give me a little bit of protection and just a little bit of sanity at night while I'm sleeping. And this option will bring my shelter system down well under 6 ounces total for the head net and the tarp with guy lines. All right, and the last option is going to be the umbrella bivy. This is very similar in weight, if not more weight, than using a tarp and bivy on its own. But depending on which trail you're hiking, backpacking on, you may or may not have an umbrella. A lot of long distance hikers will, for trails like the Continental Divide Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail. You can certainly use it on the Appalachian Trail or the New England National Scenic Trail as well. Whether or not you have an umbrella could be a deciding factor in whether or not you'll try out this option. This option was created by thru hikers and used by several thru hikers, including myself. I've used this a few times and I found it to work really well, but I also am not always carrying an umbrella, so the other options are a little bit more beneficial for me. So all that I do is I put my umbrella inside of this mesh net. And it gives me a lot more coverage than the mosquito head net will. So the whole idea with this is it gives me a lot more room compared to the mosquito head net. It allows me to have a little bit more breathability because these mesh nets can retain a little bit of extra warmth This will give me a little bit more room to move around, a little bit more sanity. It'll keep the bugs off of me. And the umbrella works really well at preventing splash up and also blocking wind. And the netting will go all the way down to my knees, and then the rest of my quilt will be exposed outside. This is going to be right in between the weight of the Bivy and the weight of the mosquito head net system, and I could probably get it even closer to the mosquito head net system in terms of weight if I go with an even lighter and thinner no-seam mesh. So there you have it, a couple of tips and a couple of different options to help make your tarp camping experiences just a little bit better. I found all of these methods to be very helpful for me, and I hope that this video helped you out too. If you have any questions on any of these, please feel free to leave them in a comment below. And if you liked this video, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel because I'm always adding new content to it. I want to thank you all for watching and for subscribing to this channel. I greatly appreciate it. I have a lot more exciting and informative content down the pipeline. But until the next one, I'll see you on the trail.